The Pittsburgh Steelers finally did what many fans have been asking for all season. They put up more than 30 points on offense. And not just barely. They hit 31. But instead of a celebration, that offensive performance was swallowed whole by a defense that completely collapsed under the primetime lights in Cincinnati. No Joe Burrow. No elite offensive line. No dominant run game. And yet the Bengals racked up 33 points and nearly 500 total yards. It was, without exaggeration, a defensive meltdown of epic proportions. This wasn't just a loss. It was a loss that exposed something deeper, something broken. A team that had been praised for steady improvement on defense over the last few weeks suddenly looked unprepared, uninspired, and outcoached. And when you zoom in on the details, it only gets worse. Ja'Marr Chase torched the Steelers for over 160 yards. Higgins added nearly 100 more. Joe Flacco, a quarterback many had written off, threw for over 340 yards. And Chase Brown, a running back averaging just 2.5 yards per carry heading into this game, gashed Pittsburgh for 108 yards on just 11 carries. That's almost 10 yards a pop. How does that happen? How does a defense that looks sharp against the Browns and Vikings get completely undressed by a Bengals offense missing key players? How do veterans like TJ Watt and Cam Hayward disappear from the game? How does an inside linebacker group that had been getting praise from every corner of the league suddenly vanish from relevance? And how in the world does a secondary built specifically to handle elite receivers fail to even slow down Chase and Higgins? It wasn't just one failure. It was a complete defensive breakdown from the front line to the secondary, from the game plan to the adjustments, or rather, the lack of adjustments. Mike Tomlin, as expected, pointed to the offense's 2 turnovers, but let's be real here. The offense was the only reason this team was even in the game. The defense, the so-called identity of this franchise, gave the game away. There's no sugarcoating that. And you could feel that frustration boiling in the locker room. I asked Joey Porter Jr. if the task of covering both Chase and Higgins had been too much. His response? We got the guys to do it. They just have to let us play. I asked him to clarify what he meant. He brought up the officiating. Said he didn't like the calls, but it's football. Now look, Joey's not going to come out and say, yeah, we couldn't handle them. No defensive back would. But the truth is this unit was shredded, and blaming the refs doesn't explain missed assignments and soft coverage. The flags might have been questionable, but they weren't the reason for what we saw. Same story with Alex Highsmith, one of the team's better run defenders. I asked him what went wrong stopping the run, and he talked about needing to be more physical and get off blocks. That's fine, but it's also football 101. When your best defenders can't give more than basic cliches after beatdown like that, it's a red flag. It means they don't have answers either. And that's exactly what we saw across the board. No answers. Just empty phrases and stunned expressions. Even Patrick Queen, usually one of the more vocal leaders, had nothing. No spark. No fire. Just a bland, we need to be better. That's when you know it's bad. Not just because the defense failed, but because it failed so completely that even the veterans couldn't explain it. So now, naturally, the conversation shifts to the coaching staff. Tomlin, Terrell Austin, who's really steering the ship? Who's deciding on the cover 2 and cover 3 schemes that clearly aren't working? Why does this team insist on rushing only 4 against offenses that are clearly exploiting soft zones and clean pockets? Why are we watching the same stale alignments week after week while opponents carve them up? Let's be honest. It's not about Thursday night games. That's just noise. Yes, short weeks are tough, but both teams had the same amount of time to prepare. The Bengals came up with clever bootlegs and a game plan that put the Steelers on their heels all night. The Steelers? They looked like they barely watched tape. No creativity. No plan B. No urgency to make adjustments at halftime. It was as if they were just hoping things would magically work out if they stuck to the script. That's coaching. That's preparation. And when you fail in both, you get what we saw, a game where a limited offense absolutely dismantled what's supposed to be one of the better defenses in the league. And by the way, this defense hasn't forced a single turnover since the game in Ireland. Not one. They're supposed to be built on takeaways, but lately, they're not even close. Against Cleveland, they nearly got a few. But against Cincinnati, They didn't even sniff a takeaway. They were just flat out bad. Now, look, people are going to try to simplify this. They're going to say it's all on Tomlin, or all on Austin, or blame the short week, or injuries, or the refs. That's what fans do. They want a single reason, a single scapegoat. It's easier to process that way. But this isn't one problem. This is a systemic breakdown. And unless the organization is willing to take a brutally honest look at every layer of it, scheme, personnel, leadership, preparation, nothing is going to change. Because right now, this defense is a mess. And you can't talk about chasing a playoff spot or being a contender when your defense gives up nearly 500 yards to a team missing its starting quarterback and starting tight end. You can't talk about Steelers football when your supposed stars disappear and your role players can't even execute the basics. Missed tackles, missed assignments, no pressure, no adjustments. That's not just bad execution. That's bad football. And if we're being honest, it's hard to take this team seriously until this gets fixed. Until the coaching staff can figure out why their schemes don't match their personnel. Until the players understand that takeaways aren't a substitute for tackling. Until the entire defense stops living off of reputation and starts producing consistently, this team is going nowhere. And whether that means changes to the coaching staff, changes to the scheme, or just a serious wake-up call in that locker room, something's got to give. What makes this all so frustrating is that there were flashes, real, tangible signs that this defense was starting to turn the corner. Against the Browns, they looked tough, smart, disciplined. In Ireland, they showed physicality and commitment to stopping the run. It wasn't perfect, but you could see the identity forming, the kind of gritty, opportunistic defense that's become synonymous with the Steelers brand. That identity completely disappeared in Cincinnati. It wasn't just that they lost, it's how far backward they slid and how quickly it happened. That tells you something. It tells you the progress wasn't as solid as people thought. Maybe it was matchup-based. Maybe it was fool's gold. Maybe the players started to believe their own hype. But whatever the case, when a team regresses that hard and that fast, it's not just about XS and OS. It's mental. It's emotional. It's about preparation, focus, and accountability. And from the looks of things, none of those were in the building on Thursday night. This is where the coaching criticism becomes more than just noise from the fan base. Because it's not just about one loss or one bad night. It's about a pattern of this team not showing up when it matters, a pattern of getting exposed against teams that, on paper, should be manageable, a pattern of failing to make in-game adjustments, and a pattern of excuses that fans are growing tired of hearing. Think about how this game unfolded. From the first quarter, it was clear that Cincinnati came to play. Their opening drives had rhythm. Their route concepts were crisp and intentional. They attacked the Steelers' soft spots with purpose. And Pittsburgh just kind of stood there. No press coverage. No real pressure packages. No sense that they were ready to dictate anything. It felt like they were reacting to everything. And reacting slowly. Where was the energy? Where was the swagger? Where were the leaders setting the tone? TJ Watt is the face of the defense. But if he's not making splash plays, who steps up? Cam Hayward is the heart and soul of the locker room. But where was the fire? When your stars are quiet, your defense becomes quiet. And this defense was silent, even as the game slipped away. The Bengals weren't even hiding what they wanted to do. They ran bootlegs. They hit simple outs. They kept testing the edges. And they got whatever they wanted. Time after time, Joe Flacco had a clean pocket and clear throwing lanes. The Steelers stuck with four-man rushes and zone coverages as if they were facing peak Peyton Manning instead of a journeyman quarterback who had just walked in the building. It was stubborn and it was costly. It's hard to know exactly where the disconnect is. Are the players failing to execute? Or are the coaches putting them in bad spots? The truth is probably both. You watch these games and you see defenders not trusting what they see. They're slow to react, hesitant to commit. That's a sign of a unit that doesn't fully believe in the system. Whether it's the coverages being called or the communication between the levels of the defense, something isn't clicking. And the longer it goes unresolved, the harder it becomes to fix. And while we're talking about belief, let's talk about the missed tackles. Because you don't need elite talent or perfect schemes to wrap up a ball carrier. That's will. That's technique. That's accountability. And Thursday night, there was none of it. Guys were bouncing off Chase Brown like he was Derrick Henry. 11 carries, 108 yards, from a guy who hadn't even cracked the top 50 in rushing production this season. That's not just bad. That's embarrassing. Even worse, you get the sense that no one on the field felt like they could stop it. You look at the body language after big runs or deep passes, and it was all resignation. Heads down, hands on hips, no communication, no fire. And that might be the most damning part of all this. Because if the players stop believing in what they're doing, or worse, stop believing in each other, then this season is already over. You just haven't seen the final record yet. There's also a serious question now about the defensive structure. This whole thing seems built on the idea that the pass rush will create chaos, and the secondary can sit back and capitalize on bad throws. But when the pass rush doesn't get home, and it didn't, this secondary isn't built to hold up. They're not physical at the line. They're not great in space. And they clearly weren't ready for the kind of precision and physicality the Bengals brought. So what's the answer? Some will say it's time to move on from Terrell Austin. Others will call for Tomlin to be held accountable. But even if you made a change tomorrow, this isn't a quick fix. The personnel is the personnel. You're not suddenly finding a shutdown corner or a rangy safety on the waiver wire in midseason. What you must do, is adapt the scheme to fit what you have. That means getting more aggressive, disguising coverages, sending pressure in creative ways, and not being so predictable. But here's the thing. We've been here before. We've seen this team be reactive, slow to change, unwilling to shake up the status quo. That's the culture that's been built. Stick to the plan. Trust the process. And maybe that works when you're winning. But when you're getting blown off the field by a Bengals team playing without its franchise quarterback, that culture starts to look more like complacency. The next step has to be brutal honesty. In the film room, in the coaches' offices, in the locker room. Because this defense isn't a tweak away from greatness. It's a rebuild away. A philosophical overhaul. You don't go from giving up over 470 yards to locking down elite offenses unless you take a long, hard look in the mirror. And that's what this team has to do now. Not next week, not in the offseason, but now. Until then, this team isn't what it wants to be. It's not the tough, physical, take-your-heart defense it claims to be. It's a defense that folds under pressure, that misses tackles, that doesn't adjust. And until all of that changes, no one is going to take them seriously, not fans, not analysts, and certainly not the opponents lining up across from them each week. But before we dive in, don't forget to subscribe to Steelers Nation Central and hit the like button on this video. Your support helps us keep bringing you the latest updates on the Pittsburgh Steelers. And don't forget to share your thoughts on the news in the comments below. In what could be the NFL's most talked about off-season bombshell, DK Metcalf has reportedly made a statement about TJ, what that has left fans and analysts buzzing across social media. The Seattle Seahawks star wide receiver, known for his explosive plays and larger-than-life personality, allegedly dropped comments that hint at both respect and a subtle challenge toward the Pittsburgh Steelers' defensive powerhouse. While the exact wording of Metcalf's remark has not been officially released, sources close to the player claim it was a mix of admiration and a veiled jab, suggesting that Metcalf is ready to face what head-on anytime. The timing of the statement couldn't be more provocative. With free agency rumors heating up and teams reevaluating their defensive and offensive lines, Metcalf's words have sparked speculation that he may be signaling more than just competitive spirit. Could he be hinting at a future matchup that fans have been dreaming of, or is this simply his way of stirring the pot before the season kicks off? Analysts are divided, with some pointing out that Metcalf has always thrived on attention-grabbing statements, while others see a deeper message about his confidence in taking on elite defenders like Watt. Social media has been ablaze since the comments surfaced. Twitter threads dissect every possible nuance, debating whether Metcalf's remark was playful banter, trash talk, or a genuine declaration of intent. Sports forums are flooded with fans imagining scenarios where Metcalf goes toe-to-toe with Watt, picturing highlight reels that could dominate highlight reels for weeks. Even former players have weighed in, noting that Metcalf's combination of size, speed, and skill could make him one of the few receivers capable of consistently challenging a defensive force like Watt. What's certain is that this rumor has already elevated anticipation for the upcoming season. Whether it's a preemptive boast or a subtle challenge aimed at one of the league's premier pass rushers, Metcalf's statement has everyone talking. As the NFL gears up for another thrilling year, the idea of DK Metcalf and TJ Watt clashing in a high-stakes showdown is enough to keep fans on the edge of their seats. One thing is clear: the buzz around this potential rivalry is only just beginning, and the football world will be watching closely to see if this verbal spark ignites a real-life collision on the field. That's it for this update. If you enjoyed the video and want to keep receiving exclusive news about the Pittsburgh Steelers, make sure to subscribe to Steelers Nation Central and give this video a like. We always look forward to hearing your comments and opinions. See you in the next video.